Peggy, for thank you, Peggy, for inviting me to be here today to talk to you guys about what the California AgrAbility is. My name is Esmeralda Mandujano, and I am with the California AgrAbility program here out of UC Davis. And as part of the work that we do, we're also part of the Farmer Rancher Stress Assistance Network grants through USDA. This is a project that for the West, specifically the Western Regional Agricultural Stress Assistance Program. And this is how we started to collaborate more closely with CDFA, as you mentioned, on all of the programming around mental behavioral health and farm worker populations. So that's another big portion of what we do. But today, I would like to focus on the California AgrAbility program here out of the University of California in Davis. Okay, so what is California AgrAbility? I think a lot of people, sometimes it takes a few times really to tell people this is the program that we work with, and remembering that name. First of all, where does AgrAbility come from? It's a mesh between the word agriculture and ability. And AgrAbility is a program that is around the United States. And here in California, like I said, we're at the University of California in Davis. These programs need to be hosted by a university. And the mission, our mission is to find ability solutions for agricultural communities. The population that we work with are farmers, agricultural workers, gardeners living with an injury or disability and a chronic illness. And more recently, USDA is pulling more towards the definition of a producer, because a producer includes anybody that's involved in the line of any sort of agricultural production, which includes the farmers, the farm workers, anybody that works in, for example, canneries, canning tomatoes, nurseries, all of those. The objectives of this program are to do farm site assessments. And the farm site assessments can really take a lot of different no two farm site assessments are exactly the same, because every farm worker is different. Their disability is different. The type of work that they're doing is different. So everything is very targeted, very specialized for whoever it is that we are visiting, or even just doing a consult in their own home, not necessarily at the site of work. And that's often the case with farm workers. We focus a lot on assistive technology solutions and equipment modification. And when we talk about assistive technology, oftentimes people tend to think of something very techy, very advanced, especially because we are embedded in an engineering department here at UC Davis. But really, assistive technologies can be anything as simple as a pair of glasses. Oftentimes, the types of cases that we're getting with farm workers are farm workers that are losing vision either because of a chronic condition such as or also just age, and a lot of them are driving large machinery. And many of them have never had the opportunity to get their eyes checked, let alone get a pair of glasses. And something that seems very low tech can really be an assistive device that can help preserve the health of the farm worker that is utilizing it, but also as a form of safety for those that are around the person in the machinery, or if they're carpooling. Farm workers tend to carpool a lot. So it's important that the driver is able to see the roads to keep them safe. So a lot of the work that we're doing is, yes, to prevent a secondary injury and to help accommodate for an injury or disability that they may have, but it also tends to really provide safety, not just for themselves, but for those around them. And we do a lot of education about farm precautions and safety, like I said. Also, how to protect your hearing, that's another very common one. And this is actually a photograph of one of our AgrAbility program participants. He had hearing loss, so we helped him get a hearing device to help him hear and be able to stay safe also around the machinery so that he could hear it. Okay, so this is AgrAbility around the country. AgrAbility is a program that is funded by the United States Department of Agriculture. It is a competitive program. This is why you see on this map, this is actually an outdated map. There's been some changes that have also impacted us here in California. So this is a map from last year. And the yellow states are those with a funded AgrAbility program. The more of like white color looking ones are the affiliate programs, and the gray ones are the ones with no project. Now, I haven't even told this to Peggy because we just found out last week before we had scheduled this meeting a few weeks ago, but we're actually not a funded project for this next 4 years. With that being said, we are striving to stay on as an affiliate program because our program has been going on here for 20 years. So we would like to not lose the AgrAbility program, and we're able to keep it going a little bit through the Farmer Rancher Stress Assistance Network. And it was also important for us not to cut services right when the grant ended, because we have a lot of open cases. Cases in AgrAbility can take anywhere from 1 year to like 5 years, depending on where we are with the farmer or the farm worker. So that's been some changes. The programs that are no longer funded as of this year are California, Utah, and Kansas. The new programs are now Florida, South Carolina, and Illinois. And the way that the grant works is that we're funded every 4 years. So every 4 years we can reapply. If we are funded, if we're not, I believe there might be an opportunity to apply again next year. I'm not 100% sure. It all depends on the funding at USDA level. With that being said, I did see the reviews from our application. I do think that we still have a very strong application. It was just one thing that we had cleared out of USDA, but it didn't get clear through the reviewers. So yeah, we're in this time where we're trying to figure out how to go back and reassess and figure out what an AgrAbility program for California should look like. With that being said, the AgrAbility program in California is quite a bit different. I mean, they're all unique. They're all very specific to their agriculture, to their population. But California is a very big territory to cover. All the grants are exactly the same. So we're taking this time to really strategize and figure out what is the best way and how can we renew the program to better fit California, which is such a huge state and can be challenging sometimes with the grant funding from USDA. Another thing which I think it's very, that would be easier for a California audience to understand is that in California, everything is much more expensive, right? So we need to be able to really leverage our resources and work with other organizations that are doing work around the same lines to continue a program like this. But yeah, just a little bit of background of what's going on in our neck of the woods and how this map will change. And again, to affirmate that we want to continue as an affiliate program. And for now, we're set to do that for the next 6 months. Okay, so why do we work with farmers and farm workers? Agriculture is one of the top 10 most hazardous industries in the United States. And in 2015, 401 farmers and farm workers died from a work-related injury. And I decided to utilize this data points to share with you all, because these are points that can easily be, well, more or less easily be quantified. But the reality is that a lot of these injuries or close injuries are often not reported. So, and even some deaths too. If a farmer or farm worker is suffering with some sort of farm stress or mental illness, or there's a lot of stress either because of the farm crop or because of something's going on in the family. We do know that some farmers will complete suicide, and they're very smart. They can make it look like it was an accident, but in fact it was intentional. There is some anecdotal data around that. But in terms of numbers, it's kind of really hard to speak on those because they're not quantified as they should be. There's underreporting often. So in terms of AgrAbility clients that are farming with a disability for AgrAbility nationwide AgrAbility collects data based on all of the data from all of the states. It gets aggregated. And what we get in those reports is that 48.5% reported chronic illness as the primary disability. And the leading disabling injuries that we see in people that work with AgrAbility are back injuries, joint injuries, arthritis, and 44.3% of the primary disabilities were a result of an injury. And this 48.5% that is attributed to chronic illness, arthritis, tends to be very, very high because farm workers and farmers, especially farm workers, if you can imagine somebody pruning in a vineyard, they're doing the same pruning motion some 16,000 times a day. So that can take a lot of wear and tear on their joints and can lead to chronic disabling injuries. We often see farm workers out there probably late 30s, early 40s with severe arthritis because they've been working 10, 20 years on very heavy work, oftentimes with labor that is compensated by piece rate. They tend to push their bodies a lot more because they're able to make more money that way. So a very neat thing about AgrAbility clientele is that shows us that really this disabled farmers and farm workers are really dedicated to feeding America. 63.3% of AgrAbility clients, and again, this includes farmers, ranchers, farm workers living and working with a disability, report working full time. So that means that they're working 30 to 52 weeks this year. If you look at the national numbers of an individual working that is employed and has a disability, those numbers are down to like 4 or 5%, sometimes 20% if it gets pretty high. So seeing the 63.3% is very high. And that's why a program like AgrAbility is important to have with the farmers and the farm workers. So again, to talk a little bit more about farming and arthritis, commercial farming increases the rate of developing arthritis because there's a lot of bending, stooping, twisting, kneeling. All of these motions can really have detrimental impacts on the musculoskeletal system. And our AgrAbility director is actually a researcher in musculoskeletal injuries in agricultural workers. One of the interventions that he was able to apply is what's called the UC Davis tub. I don't have a picture of it here, but as you can see the photograph of the man that is pouring over the grapes. Traditionally, the grape bins that were utilized in the vineyards weighed 55 pounds, I believe. And through his research study, they redesigned the tub so that it would have edges that were easier to grasp, so they weren't hurting the joints of the farm worker as much. And they reduced the size to 44 pounds. The reduction was of 11 pounds. And that showed significant reduction in musculoskeletal disease such as low back pain and arthritis. So that's actually a tub that is now implemented. It's widely implemented in the Napa Valley. If you go to some of the vineyards out there, they even call that tub the UC Davis tub. And those are more like larger projects that are done through our department at Bio and Ag Engineering, but the AgrAbility program is looking at individuals one-on-one, but we work a lot one with the other to try to make impacts industry-wide, but also target individual people that may need help along the way. And you can see in this other photograph too, in the one to your left, bottom left, that is somebody that's picking cilantro. And that is not an ideal ergonomic position for somebody to be holding more than like 5 minutes, let alone an 8-hour shift. So some of the suggestions that we do on something like that is doing more movements that utilize the muscles instead of the joints. But it can be very challenging, right? Because the farm worker is trying to do it as quickly as possible to make as many bunches as possible, because that's how they can make money. And some of these are just screenshots. Some of them are videos that they have on the research side, and you can just see the farm workers pick at an incredible rate. It's we often hear that farm work is referred as low skill labor. It really takes a lot of skill. When I do the farm side assessments, I always take it upon myself, one, to not have the farmer or the farm worker waste time by showing me around what they do, but I work along their side to get to know what is it exactly that they're doing. And oftentimes they will tell me, no, don't pick that tomato. That tomato is not ripe yet. If you did that, you would make the farm lose money. Or I'm just not quick enough, or I don't they have all of these tricks to figure out by sensation, like when the strawberries are going to get picked. So it's a very intricate process. I would say that it's very highly skilled labor that not all of us can do. I know for sure that I wouldn't. I mean, like I'm telling you, they always tell me, no, that's not right. No, you're not doing this right. No, you're picking the wrong tomato. And it's hot out there. Sometimes it's very hot when we go out there. Sometimes it's very smoky. I mean, we've been hearing it more now. Farm workers and farmers didn't stop working through pandemic. They don't stop working through like the 111, 116 heat that we saw last week. So I just wanted to take the time to really recognize that the work that they do is very difficult, and it is really not low skilled. It's very highly skilled labor. So farming and arthritis, it affects 1/3 of all adult and farm ranch operators and workers. So this is one of the most common and disabling conditions that we see. And it will make routine tasks become more difficult to complete. I have gone on some farm side assessments where actually this one was in a house with farm workers. Sometimes we do the assessments inside the house, and it's although we don't see them at work, it's you can observe something. So for this specific worker, I saw that she was cooking, and as she was cooking, because most of the time when you come in and do the assessments, people want to feed you. They're very welcoming. They're very open to talking to you once you have built that rapport. And she was cooking. She would set this chair in front of her stove, and I thought, well, this is a good way to rest, right? But as I got to know her more, I realized that it was because she just couldn't stand up. So she would put all of her energies in her 8 hours of work. But then when she got home, her back hurt so much that she needed a chair in order to do something like cooking. And oftentimes they won't tell you this, right? Because the culture of farming is something that's also very important to know. They are very prideful. They will work themselves as much as they can in order to continue to provide to their family. And oftentimes it's not super easy for them to take help. Another case that I had was of another, this was a farmer that I called her for 1 year, once a month, just kind of to check in on her to see if she was ready to receive the help of this device that would help her not pass out when it was very hot out there working with her goats. So a lot of it is also, when you do the assessments, it's also keeping connected with them and having them know that somebody's there to reach out when they're ready to accept help or accept trying some things to see if they'll help them with their injury or disability. And many agricultural workers do not know that arthritis can be delayed and managed with simple changes in lifestyle. So for some of the people that we see at their home having a hard time, even something like opening a door, it can get to that point. There are devices that we can install on their houses to open the door, things like that are small. So I've already kind of talked a little bit about how can AgrAbility help. We're doing a lot of that connection into assistive devices. But one of the big things that we do is that we do a lot of educational tools, because farm culture is often not something that is understood by providers of a lot of services. Sometimes we have agencies that provide services, but they don't necessarily understand the culture of farming. So that's why it's important for us to provide some of this information. Some of the common one that we have is arthritis in gardening, arthritis in agriculture, which, like I said, are very common. And then when we translate those tools that are originally, at least these two were originally developed in English, by the National AgrAbility Program and a lot of state representatives coming together to put these together. Then we translated it into this fotonovela, which in Spanish is called Podrá ser la artritis lo que me causa dolor, or in English, Could Arthritis Be What Is Causing My Pain? So we basically translated the arthritis and agriculture booklet into this fotonovela, but we didn't just translate. We also we looked at the culture and we realized no farm worker is going to sit down and look at all of this brochure. So we utilized a fotonovela, which is something that is very commonly utilized in a lot of Latin American countries, especially like Mexico, where we're getting a lot of farm workers to come here. So we created a story that talked about arthritis, and we put in their pictures that they could feel identified with. So farm workers feeling the aches and pains of arthritis. Another thing too is that when I was taking this out into outreach events like health fairs, I would tell them, oh, we have this novella that talks about arthritis and agriculture. And as we talked a little bit more about what it was, then a lot of farm workers would say, oh, it's true, I feel these, this, and this, but they didn't necessarily ever identify that they could potentially be working and living with a disabling condition such as arthritis. So this is the way that we try to educate them on those topics. The more recent one that we developed along with the Western Center of Agricultural Health and Safety, which is also a program here at the University of California in Davis, is Los Cinco Pasos Saludables, or the 5 healthy steps. We have it both in Spanish and in English, but mostly utilize this one with farm workers. So those 5 healthy steps are for the prevention of diabetes. And the way that this resource came to us was that I started to realize that a lot of the farm workers that were coming to our program had this comorbidity, right? A lot of them had arthritis, but then they also had diabetes, and one can make the other one harder to take care of. But there's a lot of information about diabetes out there, but there was nothing really targeted to farm workers. So we developed this story, again, like a novella, like a little story booklet, which tells the story of a farm worker family. And through there, the family learns these 5 healthy steps to help not just the father that develops diabetes, but also to help the whole family kind of contribute and stay together and take care of their diabetes together as a family. In that novella, we also highlight the role of community health workers or promotores, volunteers at clinics, or also just volunteers, people that live in the communities and that are trusted gatekeepers. People go to them for information. And more recently with the pandemic, we saw that California is making a big investment on community health workers, because it takes having these people that can connect with the farm working populations and talking to them and having them trained in their communities. So like I said, we also do assessments. These are some photographs from our assessments. With the farmers, we tend to go a lot out into the farms. With farm workers, often the visits are at their homes, but we can also learn a lot at their homes. Like I mentioned, there's just seeing them move around their house. You can see some standing over a step, or going over stairs that don't have railings, things like that. And these visits are also very welcoming. People really want to show you what they do. And for me, like I said, it's very important for me to do the work alongside the farmer and the farm worker, because only that way can I really see what could potentially be difficult. Of course, I also do a lot of observation, but I mean, sometimes I'm out there with them 4 or 5 hours. I remember one time we did 2 hours of feeding rabbits for one of the farmers, and On that one, we identified that a motorized wheelbarrow would probably be something that would help him. So we talked about motorized wheelbarrows. Some assistive solutions and modifications that are common for us to recommend are, again, assistive technologies can be something very simple, but that can make a very big difference in the body. For example, ergonomic pruners, the pruners that you see here, the backhoe pruners. We recommend these a lot to farm workers that work in vineyards. And the neat things about this is that typically when we go to somewhere like Home Depot or Ace, we're just gonna see probably like 1 or 2 types of pruners or shovels. Those are generally designed to for a pretty tall male. But a lot of the farm workers don't necessarily fit that, or the farmers either. The great thing about the backhoe pruners is that they come in different sizes. They come in small, medium, large. So you can fit the farm worker to the tool instead of fitting the tool to the work. You can also change the blades on these depending on whatever they're cutting, and it makes a big difference once they're out there working with the pruning. One of the things that we often see with farm workers is that, and with farmers too, is that especially in vineyards, if they're dominant on their right hand and they're pruning away, they don't necessarily give themselves a break. So they keep pruning with that hand, and then they become disabled in the hand. They have to get surgery, and then they train their left hand to do the work, to continue to be able to work and provide for their families. So then they train their left hand, and then their left hand also has the potential of getting injured. Of course, in work, oftentimes we just say, well, why don't we switch the task, right? You can have them do one thing now and then another thing another hour. In industrial farm work, you can't necessarily do that. It's very hard to switch workers from one to the next. So one of the things that we started recommending was giving your right hand, your dominant hand, a 5-minute break with your left hand. Yes, you may be a little bit slower, but you're giving your right hand a break. When I first started, I would tell people, well, just take a 5-minute break, because research has proved that a 5-minute break can really help reduce injury, but it does not reduce production. So this is something that our director, Dr. Fatala, has an article on, and so it's proven through evidence. So we've been telling people, give yourself a break, but you can keep working on with your left hand. So that's been working a little bit better. The next tool that we have on here is a shovel that's called the Her shovel. Again, this is a shovel that is, it's ergonomically designed, and this one is specific for females. So in essence, they're a little bit smaller, lighter, and it has a ring for more support, because women's upper body strength is not as much as it is for a male. And then the next photograph on here is a kneeler. So you see the person there kneeling, and it can also be flipped over so people can sit on it. The great thing about this is that when you're kneeling, you can use the handrails to help you stand up. So this is this one's mostly recommended to like smaller farmers, and also to a lot of people that are doing gardening. So we do a lot of collaboration to get people to the solutions. AgrAbility Tools is our current partner, and what we do with AgrAbility Tools is, and first, the AgrAbility Tools program is a program out of the California Foundation for Independent Living Centers. So what they do is that they assist Californians living with a disability to help them find assistive devices or find ways to become independent. They have a lot of assistive devices and programming. So we partner with them because they have, back then I used to be called the Device Learning Library. It's now a Device Learning Library under NATAD's program that is an online program, database search. So what we did, it was that when I was doing the farm side assessments, I would often, so some of these tools that I just shared with you, I would say, well, there's these tools that we can, that might help, but we don't necessarily know, right? Because a lot of these solutions are things that people have to try to see if it works for them, because everybody's so specific. The type of work they're doing is so specific. Their disability so specific. Disabilities can also change with time. So the AgrAbility program really only funded the education portion. We could tell people this thing is available and can help you. But I felt it wasn't appropriate to say, there's this tool that can help you. If I tell a farm worker, there's this $50 pair of crayons that may work for you. But $50 can be a lot to try something that may not necessarily work for you. Same thing with smaller farmers. There's this device that can help you pick your greens a lot quicker and save your energy if you're a cancer survivor. But it's $500, so you'll have to like buy it, but then you can't return it because it's a specialized tool. So that's one of the reasons why we started our partnership with AgrAbility Tools. And with them, we specifically focus on adding devices that were to help gardeners and farmers and farm workers to their device lending library, so that Californians could check them out, try them out, or if we did a site assessment, we could connect the farm worker with a tool for them to try. And the reason why we amplified it into gardeners was because we wanted to make sure that we were adding this farming tools, this ag tools into the device lending library, but that it was going to be appropriate both for the populations that are served by AgrAbility Tools and also the people that we're working with AgrAbility. So all device loans are for 5 weeks unless otherwise specified, and they find used devices for free and low cost that can go on there. They can also sell used devices in this device lending database. So every year for 4 years, we added some gardening and farming tools onto the device lending library. And it's pretty easy to use. It's linked onto our webpage under tools, but essentially we also became one of the device lending libraries. So first we sent out some of these gardening and farming devices to each of the 11 device lending libraries, because we wanted to make sure that all over the state of California, there was going to be availability of these tools. And then we became our own device lending library to hold some of the more ag-based tools. So this is a snapshot of the web page. It just shows the search for something that's in our device lending library here at UC Davis. Some of the things that we have are like the anti-vibration gloves, which can be great for the farmers that are on the tractors for a long time, because the tractors vibrate a lot, and all of those vibrations can in the long run hurt their joints, or if they already have arthritis, it can be painful. If they have some nerve damage, that can also be painful. So this is what the device lending library looks like. This is what one of the tools that we have under works is. It's a pair of device of Bionic Gloves. We actually checked these out to a farm worker that had 3 of his fingers cut with a machine. He was working in like this timing belt where they were sorting raisins, and his fingers got caught in the machine, but they were replanted, so they were able to salvage the fingers and put them back on. And this tool was going to help him protect his hand a little bit more. So this is something that we recommended for him, and it helped him. This is a utility cart that is powered. So this is a device that is also part of our device lending library, but this one's actually currently checked out to a sheep farmer, and he is a stomach cancer survivor. So strength, stamina, feeding a lot of animals was something that was very difficult for him. So this motorized utility vehicle is something that helped him move the feed around and help him feed the sheep. These are the portable hand controls for a vehicle. We've used this quite a few times. to show farmers with lower extremity mobility, so low mobility in their legs. Also, some farmers that have prosthesis in their legs to be able to get back on to driving in a safe way. So this is something that they've tried to. So we rely a lot on collaborations because really the AgrAbility program is mostly like a technical program. We offer the education, telling people what is available out there. But through the partnership with AgrAbility Tools, we're able to show them some of the device, let them borrow it for a few weeks, but we cannot purchase the device for them. So this is where we partner with other collaborators, such as the Department of Rehabilitation, because they can help fund some of these assistive devices. So how can AgrAbility and the Department of Rehabilitation collaborate? It's really a step-by-step process, right? The California AgrAbility takes and the consumer or farmer doing an intake to determine the next course of action. So we do a lot of the outreach too. We identify farmers and farm workers, and through having had this program 2 decades in the state, we've developed a lot of partnerships with a lot of outreach personnel. And oftentimes the farmers and farm workers will get referred to us from other organizations that refer them directly to us. They understand what AgrAbility is, and they can tell us this farmer would benefit from your services. So the next step is that California AgrAbility does a site assessment to determine what the client needs. Again, this is something that we were doing a lot based on the AgrAbility grant that we had. We no longer have that, so this is probably the step that's going to we're not going to be able to provide anymore for now. So hopefully in the future we can figure out something to get that back onto the program services. And then the client tries assistive tool that if it's available in the device lending library. And then the client is referred to DOR to start case with a counselor. This was also very important for us because starting a case with a counselor, at the beginning, it was difficult because oftentimes the counselors don't necessarily understand farming culture. They don't necessarily understand. I mean, it's a valid question that we often get. Why would you keep somebody that has a disability or an injury in such a dangerous job as agriculture? And the reality is that they're going to keep hopping on that tractor, even if they have a disabling condition, even if they're wearing a prosthesis, because that is the type of work that they've been doing for generations. They're not going to want to get retrained on something that is completely different for them. And this just takes time away, right? And it really takes away from their independence to try to train them on something that's not necessarily something that they want to do. Yes, they want to be employed, but it's not necessarily something that they want to do. So then the California AgrAbility informs DOR of the necessary modifications needed to help the farmer retain their job, and DOR helps fund with the modification. And then AgrAbility follows the consumer until the farmer feels independent and safe while working. So it takes a lot of collaboration. So this is one example of the three-way collaboration. So we met this farmer. She is a farmer from the San Diego area. She is a veteran, and she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And multiple sclerosis can be a very debilitating injury or a condition. She started a farm to help eat clean, to help her with her condition, and also to have a source of employment after she came back from service. And how we heard from her was that she was in her farm doing weeding. She was down on her knees, and then she couldn't get up because multiple sclerosis can be a debilitating injury that hurts your joints. You can't get up. There's so much pain there. So she had to wait 6 hours on the floor until her husband came to help her get up. When we connected with her, it had taken about 2 years that she was working with a counselor, a DOR counselor. So then what we did is that we connected with them and we facilitated the conversation of people are going to continue to work in agriculture, so even if it's dangerous. So what we did is that we connected her with this the wheel hoe, which is a device that we have in our device lending library. It allows her to weed from a standing position, so she doesn't have to get down on her knees. This tool is only about $500. But we didn't know if it was going to work for her. So we asked her to buy this $500 device, and it doesn't work. Then basically the farmer is out $500, right? So with the device in the library, she was able to borrow it. We proved to the Department of Rehabilitation that this was a quick, easy fix, very affordable in comparison to some of the other cases that DOR takes on, which can be thousands and thousands of dollars. And it was a very quick case. Within like 3 months, it was closed. She had her wheel hoe. She was working well. So a lot of it was really communication through that partnership. Let's skip that one. Actually, I have this video. This is from Tennessee AgrAbility. But let me show you. And it shows a typical case of a farmer that is serviced by AgrAbility services. So this wasn't done by the AgrAbility program in Tennessee. It's a program, the video was done by their Department of Health, which hosts their Department of Rehabilitation, like in California.
Got me out of the house, more active, doing things that I enjoy doing. Mowing hay, raking hay, helping my dad take care of this farm.
Farming
It's just a way of life.
has been a part of Michael Norrid's life.
Since I was big enough to ride in my daddy's lap on a tractor.
Getting on that tractor was never an obstacle.
I was in an ATV accident.
Until 6 years ago.
It took my life, more or less.
When an accident cost him the ability to use his legs.
Well, I mean, that was just the end of it. I mean, there was no more walking outside and getting on a tractor and going to work. I mean, it's roll outside, and there's no way to get on a tractor without some kind of assisted equipment.
No way until Michael learned about this new type of assistive technology.
Everything's remote controlled.
That lifts him from his wheelchair to his tractor or his truck.
For me, it worked perfect.
The Tennessee Department of Human Services covered the cost to modify Michael's truck with a lift through its Vocational Rehabilitation program. And today,
Vocational Rehab helped make this possible.
Michael is back in the driver's seat.
I can go outside and get in a vehicle and go to town.
Of life.
Well, I mean, I went from sitting in the house watching TV and YouTube and stuff with nothing to do to I have all kinds of things to do now. It picks my wheelchair up, takes it with me. I can go anywhere I want to do. I have no limitations now.
Okay. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. For some reason, my screen is black, so I can't see anything. But yeah, essentially that is a video of a farmer, like a typical case of AgrAbility. Those kind of cases can take a few years to kind of get through the process of bringing the Life Essentials company, which makes the lifts, into the state, getting it approved to DR. Sometimes it's easier if the farmer can't afford to purchase it. It's a lot quicker, but that is an example of what we typically do with
Esmeralda, you're freezing. It looks like we have lost our guest. Looks like she might have frozen. It is 12:53. I will stick it out here and in case she's able to check back in. I put in earlier information, the links to AgrAbility for those that wish to look further. I'll drop it in one more time for AgrAbility.
Hello. Hi, my name is
Yes.
Maria. So
Hi,
I'm
Maria.
talking to Esmeralda. She's trying to get back online. So maybe we can hang in there tight, but yeah, share your information.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for. So that's the link for AgrAbility to their website. We'll give Esmeralda a moment. Thank you, Maria. And I think we've got her back.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm back. I'm just on 1 hour limits on the Wi-Fi. That's why it kicked me out. Technology. So yes, a lot of what we do is trying to figure out what's going on with technology, just as we're doing here. So I just have a couple slides left here. So this is a publication that is called the 25 Years, 25 Stories. So for the 25-year anniversary of AgrAbility, they collected 25 different stories of the 25 AgrAbility programs that were going on. And ours specifically featured a farm worker because California agriculture is the state that has the most farm workers. So National AgrAbility selected a farm worker story from our end. And now it's not letting me share. But yeah, that's basically the last slide I have here. I better not try to have my technology do too much anymore before it kicks me out again.
Well, thank you, Esmeralda, for bringing so much information. I do have a message from our Office of Civil Rights Officer. He wants to thank you for coming, and we have a definite interest of bringing you back if in the near future, and we will make sure we have a very large representation from the entire department. This is really amazing information.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me and for helping me go through with all of my technology issues that I had, but we made it happen. I'm always happy to come back and have a discussion because these presentations tend to have a lot of discussion because there's a lot of questions about AgrAbility because it's a very niche program that I think it's very important for California agriculture, and it really allows us to get down and talk to the farmers and farm workers and figure out what the need is that they have.
All right, I just put into the chat to ask if there are any questions before we close this down. I do have a question. You mentioned about funding. So it's potentially you've lost that the program does not have funding, or?
So can you repeat that?
Can you clarify what you said about the funding or lack of funding?
So the AgrAbility program, all of the AgrAbility programs are basically entirely funded by the United States Department of Agriculture, but that funding has been getting more and more competitive because there isn't enough funding for all of the states to have an AgrAbility program, but it has been promoted for a lot of more states to apply, which makes sense, right? It's a program that is really very much of a need. It gets renewed every 4 years. We have to reapply to have a new program, but we can build on what we have. So when we applied this year, we did not get the funding. So for a year, we won't have an AgrAbility program. We can reapply to get it again, but I think our program and our state is at a point where we probably need to strategize on how to make it more of a state program, a California program, rather than a federal program, because federal programs sometimes don't have as much of a reach in larger states. At least with AgrAbility, all of the funding for all of the states, whatever California gets is the same that, let's say, Rhode Island gets. And those are two very different states. Yeah, and I have spoken to like the Secretary of Agriculture, not the current one, the previous one, Sonny Perdue. Actually, it wasn't Sonny Perdue, it was somebody that came for Sonny. And they basically said that there could be no additional funding because the way that AgrAbility programs are written into the Farm Bill, because it's under the Farm Bill, it's a line item. So it's already allocated. That's the kind of funding that will always be, and it will always be distributed in a way, unless there's a major change in legislation. And as we know, that can take a very long time. So we're taking this as an opportunity to explore on how to expand and make the program more of a California state funded project.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? All right, well, it looks like I don't have any other questions. You've had some compliments if you're reading the chat, so you can see.
Yeah, thank you all so much. I know it's a lot of information, so I'm happy to come back if there's more questions or a facilitated discussion.
There's definitely, I'm sure we would like to have you come back and do one more time and a little bit, and maybe we'll give you a little bit more time, lengthened time for presentation too.
Yeah, we can always talk about the other program, which I didn't talk about, which is what we've been working on with CDFA, the Farmer Rancher Stress Assistant Network programs.
Yes. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us for lunch. Hopefully you had time to enjoy your lunch while getting informed about AgrAbility with Esmeralda. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.